This episode contains graphic descriptions of crime scenes which may be disturbing to some listeners.
Today we're bringing you the story of a beautiful young girl who mysteriously disappears while selling magazines in Arkansas, only to be found brutally murdered 11 days later in Tennessee. Does the killer's sadistic MO suggest this wasn't his first murder? Or his last? We retrace the final movements of a victim who knew there could be danger, but didn't see it hiding in her blind spot.
This is APB Cold Case. Here's your host, former police chief Mark Spahn.
Our story begins on November 15, 2006 at a truck stop near the Galloway exit on Interstate 40 in North Little Rock, Arkansas. The skies are overcast, temperatures are in the high 50s, and the wind's just starting to pick up. But 19-year-old Tracy Onawa Jones isn't worried about the weather. She has one thing on her mind, and that's winning. At 5'4" and 110 pounds, blonde-haired, brown-eyed Tracy might be small, but she's mighty. She has a competitive spirit, and ever since she was a little girl, she's used to doing things her own way. So when she joins a traveling magazine sales group, she brings that same enthusiasm with her. She's here to sell magazine subscriptions. And lots of them. Why? Because the top sales prize is a European vacation, and there's no question in her mind she's going to win. So when her boss pulls into the parking lot, Tracy's ready to hit the ground running. Here's her former manager, Robert Blair.
The last thing that I said to Tracy was, "I love you, tear it up, I'll see you later." Tear it up just means, have a good day, get some sales.
Tracy leans over and gives him a kiss. You see, Robert's not just her boss, he's also her boyfriend. Robert said it was about 10:15 a.m. when Tracy hops out of the old beat-up 15-passenger Dodge van in front of the Pilot truck stop. Wearing blue jeans, a blue Georgia Tech hoodie, and white tennis shoes, Tracy heads inside, her blonde ponytail whipping in the wind as she opens the door. She goes to the restaurant section of the building, hoping to sell subscriptions to the patrons eating inside. She approaches a diner sitting at a table, but he's not interested. She decides to go to the retail area. Maybe she'll have better luck over there. In the meantime, Robert heads back toward Little Rock to check on the rest of his sales team. We asked Robert what it's like managing a sales crew on the road.
It's fluid, depending on sales, but we try not to keep people out there past 8 o'clock. Has it happened before? Yes. It just depends on the manager at their discretion, what they want to do. If they're not pleased with how many sales are in the vehicle, they'll keep them out there a little bit longer. I don't like to keep people out there too long. If they don't make it, they don't make it. As far as our routine, Tracy and I's routine, spotting her out for the day as opposed to other agents to where, I would give them a pickup time like every hour and a half. If I come back and check on them and, they're not really pulling sales, then I'm going to move them to another location. If they're doing well and they want to stay, then I'll leave them there for another hour and a half. But with Tracy, that's kind of what we call stemming. It's where you're in a parking lot and you pick and choose who you want to talk to. Instead of going door to door, not knowing, who's going to answer, you pick and choose who you want to talk to. So we kind of make that an all day thing. We call and check in or, vice versa. You check in with me or I'll call you. If I call you and you don't answer, I assume that you're talking to a customer and I'll call you back or you call me back. That was our plan for that day as well.
So at about noon, Robert calls Tracy on her cell.
She told me what she had as far as sales. I said, "Good job, keep it going. I'll check in with you later. I got to go pick up these other guys. I love you." And that was that. And that was the last time that I had spoken to her. And she said, "I love you back. I'll see you later."
Following their routine, Robert continues to check in with Tracy as he shuttles other crew members around town.
I guess I called Tracy a couple times. She answered. Everything was fine, but I guess maybe the third time I called her, she didn't answer. So I left her a message and I said, call me back. I'm just checking in on you. And she never called back. So I kept calling. Eventually, about the third time, I started getting really concerned. Kept calling and it freaked me out.
Robert was managing a larger than usual crew that day.
I think that day I had about 10 or 11. including Tracy, I had a pretty full vehicle that day.
I asked if he was able to go back to the pilot truck stop during the day.
I couldn't go back because it was too far away from the rest of the crew, and I had to do hour drops. I was late getting back to them, after dropping Tracy off. I couldn't be going back and forth, being late. And, I had to just trust that Tracy was going to tear it up like she always does. So I let her do her thing, and I focused on the rest of people that were in my vehicle that day.
As Robert shuttles the rest of his crew from place to place, he keeps calling Tracy, but now she's not picking up.
So the whole rest of the day, I hadn't spoken to her. I was concerned, and then by the time I got everybody picked up, I said, "Look, we're going out to North Little Rock. I want everybody to get out and look for Tracy at this truck stop." That's what they did. They got out, they looked. We spent maybe an hour. We couldn't find Tracy at the end of the night. When I called one of my buddies, I said, "Look, we're looking for Tracy." And he says, "No, you got my people in the car. They need to get back. I need to check them in, yada, yada, yada." So I was like, "You know what? Fine." I know it was a distance from North Little Rock to Malvern. So I had to get everybody back because it was already late. It was already nighttime. So I wouldn't say 9 o'clock. We got everybody back. One of my buddies pulled me aside and said, maybe she took off because, she didn't like the way that you were paying her. And I said, no, I paid her well, you know what I mean? She made a lot of money. I mean, I just don't, think that she would burn off. So I gave her the evening thinking that maybe she would show up. Maybe she had gone out and decided to party with some people, and I gave her the benefit of the doubt. I gave the situation the benefit of the doubt, try to remain optimistic. The next morning, I woke up, she wasn't there.
In this line of work, it's not unusual for a sales rep to leave or just quit. Robert calls another manager.
They were convinced that she went home, got fed up with me and the line of work, and decided to go home. So that's when she had this piece of paper that had all of her family's names and numbers on it that she kept in the room that we shared. And so that's when I began calling all those numbers and asking if they had spoken to her. I think the first one I called was her mom and asked if they had spoken to Tracy, because I thought maybe Tracy had decided to leave, and I was going to try to see what was going on, convince her to come back.
It's now November 16th, the day after Tracy was last seen at the truck stop. Her family has not heard from her either. Here's Robert.
And that's when, I took the crew back to Little Rock to work, and then went to North Little Rock Police Department and tried to file a police report, and they said it was too soon. They said because of her age and the line of work that she was in, that she probably just ran off. They gave me hell about leaving her at a truck stop being a female. And looking back now, I regret that. I believe I had tunnel vision at that time. I saw the money that she was making and didn't really think about the consequences of a female being at a truck stop. I just didn't really grasp the danger of it, I guess, not at that point in time. They weren't very helpful right off the bat. It wasn't until a couple days after that I kept pursuing the matter, because she hadn't called, she hadn't checked in with her family. Her belongings were still, at the hotel. She hadn't made any contact with me to get her stuff. I just knew something bad had happened.
Could Tracy have decided to just walk away? I wanted to find out more about her, so I sat down with some of Tracy's family. Here's Tracy's dad.
Well, when she was little, she was a dreamer. I mean, she always was able to go outside of her body and believe in what she could be. Like, in her mind, she was a cheerleader excellence. And even though she never cheerleaded, but that was her happy side of life. She was really good at making up stories, and people would believe her. She could sell a refrigerator to an Eskimo.
Here's Tracy's older sister, Teresa.
Oh, yeah, she was a strong personality. She could take over a situation in a heartbeat and just make it all about what she wanted to do and how she wanted to do it.
We asked Tracy's father about her unusual middle name.
Onawa means wide awake one in Cherokee. because I came with the word Onawa, because when she came out, she was wide awake and fighting. That's where she got her name.
As Tracy and her sister grew up, the family moved around a lot.
We live in Southern California. We lived in Oregon. We lived on Kwajalein. A lot of moving.
Kwajalein is an atoll on the Marshall Islands, and the family moved there for her dad's work.
The whole time we're on the island, she was a typical kid, just having fun with her friends and going swimming and hanging out.
Eventually, the family moved back to Albany, Oregon. We spoke with a childhood neighbor and friend of Tracy's from Albany who wants to remain anonymous. She describes Tracy as always happy and kind, an occasional jokester with an engaging smile and a contagious laugh, a beautiful girl inside and out. She said that hanging out with Tracy was always a good time. In fact, everyone we spoke to lit up when they talked about her, including another friend, also named Rob, who spent time with Tracy in the months before she left Oregon for the job in magazine sales.
I met her in the summer of '05 and knew her going in so thick. So I knew her for, just like a year. And I thought she was absolutely beautiful. I just think she had a really calming energy about her, almost like a muse, like you can't really explain, you can explain a muse, but you just have it or you don't, and she had that. She had that muse energy where you just wanted her around you.
Tracy made friends wherever she went, and according to Robert Blair, she was a natural at magazine sales.
Tracy was quick to get along with everybody. She just had this very magnetic personality. People were drawn to her. She just was very friendly, very outgoing. People flocked to that. She knew how to talk to people. She started making sales pretty much right off the bat. She was just very good, and she was a natural at selling and talking to people and just figuring out what makes people tick and what makes people talk.
Tracy actually first learned about the magazine sales job when someone knocked on her door.
Another girl that worked for me, Stephanie, she knocked on the door where Tracy was living. Tried to sell Tracy some magazines, and Tracy couldn't afford it but was looking for work. Stephanie came to me and said, "Hey, I got a girl that wants to join our crew." And so I went over and I met Tracy and I explained to her what the job was about, what it entailed. And I asked her if it was something that she was interested in doing. And she got back to me and said that she was interested, that her bags were packed, and she was ready to go that quick. So, this looks fun. I want to travel, see the country and, make money. She was pretty much sold at that moment.
Tracy's family said she was always looking for something more, that next opportunity, the next adventure. Here's Tracy's sister, Teresa.
And joined the magazine sales. So she left home after working at Safeway, realizing that a 9-to-5 is not what she wanted. That was not anything close to what she wanted. So with the magazine sales, it gave her a chance to explore and not have an average 9-to-5. She was traveling, she was doing cool things, meeting new people, which is a lot better than working at the deli at Safeway.
She likes a challenge. That's her personality. And she got into that because it was a way for her to try to achieve something for herself.
But Tracy's dad also knew the potential dangers involved.
When I heard she was doing it, and I said, "You be careful, watch your back." And because I said, there's people out there trying to hurt you, and they will.
In fact, Tracy told her dad about a frightening encounter she had in Nebraska a couple weeks before going to Arkansas.
Like 2 weeks before this went down, 2 weeks before, and she got into the biggest no-no you're never supposed to do. Got in a car with a guy to sell him some magazines, and she had to fight to get out of that car. And she was able to get away from him. And when I heard that, little bells were going off. This is a warning.
Robert remembered how that incident scared Tracy.
I think it was Lincoln, Nebraska. She had gone out with another manager who took her crew to a certain part of town, wherever, a different location. And when I got back to the hotel that evening, she came up and hugged me and was crying. And she had mentioned that there was some sort of vehicle that tried to get her into the vehicle and take off with her. That's what I remember her telling me. I didn't know that she was actually in the vehicle. I don't remember her telling me that. I just remember that she approached the vehicle because they approached her when she was going door to door. And as soon as she approached the vehicle, that they tried to pull her in there. She thought it was a magazine crew. There's a coffee company in Oregon, Dutch Brothers. She said that one of the stickers on the back of the SUV or van or whatever it was Dutch Brothers. So she thought it was a mag crew because a lot of the mag crews had Dutch Brothers stickers on the back of their SUVs. And so, or their vans or whatever they were driving. She thought it was a mag crew. And from what I recall, we talked about it for about a day. I discussed it with the other managers. I asked her what she wanted to do about it, and she said, let's just forget about it. So we didn't pursue it. We didn't, contact the authorities. She said, let's just forget about it. And we ended up leaving. I think we left shortly after that, not within that day, but within a couple days.
It was frightening enough that Tracy mentioned the incident to her family. And Tracy's sister said that she regularly kept in touch with family while on the road.
I think she called my mom at least every week. Once a week, she would call her and check in. I would occasionally get a text from her, probably once a month, checking in more on me and how my life was going. But I do know that she was telling my mom that she was thinking about wanting to leave and come home. I think she was starting to get a little homesick.
Tracy often spoke about her family with Robert.
She talked about her sister often, said that she loved her sister, she missed her family. I can't really remember specifics on what I just remember talking about her sister a lot. She said that her and her sister were close, that her and her mom were close. She mentioned being homesick, I guess, a week prior to her disappearance. And so, I thought maybe that was tied in with her disappearing, that maybe, she had left, just wanted to go home. And that's why I kept calling, her mom asking, hey, if Tracy did contact you, just let me know so I know she's safe.
Her father remembers when Tracy's travels with the magazine crew brought her to California, closer to where he was living.
She called my house, and my wife picked up the phone, and she said, is this Tracy? He says, yeah. She goes, your dad really would like to see you. And she was in Riverside. And I'm Fullerton. She says, I really can't, I can't. My wife begged her, he'd love to see you. And she says, I can't, we're going out of California. We're getting ready to head east. Before that, she actually called me on the phone, and we talked for about an hour. And she told me how things were going, what she was doing, and I asked her, take care of yourself, watch your back. What do you have? She goes, Dad, I'm good. I got my pepper spray. I've got my stuff. I'm good. I'm watching myself. I says, please do. Watch your back. That's the last words I told her on the phone.
So when Tracy disappeared from the truck stop, everyone was calling her cell phone.
I blew that thing up, and then eventually, I don't think they ever found her cell phone. I don't know where it ended up, but I do know eventually it was just turned off and probably thrown away because it stopped ringing. It just goes straight to voicemail. Of course, the voicemail box is full because every single person who knew Tracy was calling and leaving messages saying, please, we're all scared, we're all worried for you, you have to let us know you're okay. So I know that when she had gone missing, we wanted to go to the public, and the Arkansas police said that we couldn't because she was probably just a runaway. Even though she was an adult out on her own, so she wouldn't be running away from home. But they said, oh, she's probably just a runaway. We don't want to put this on the news. It's not that important. She'll show up.
After Tracy went missing, each day that passed became even more agonizing for her family and friends who were waiting for answers, hoping that she just impulsively decided to venture off on her own. And then, according to a story from ActionNews5.com, on Sunday, November 26, 2006, at around 4 p.m., Memphis police responded to a 911 call about a body that was discovered in the semi-wooded area of South 3rd Street and Westview Road. A passerby found the victim lying in a ditch on the side of the road. She was found partially clothed, wearing only a sweatshirt. Her death was ruled as a homicide by the Shelby County Medical Examiner, and because there was no identification found with the body, she was listed as a Jane Doe. It took several days to connect the dots, but the Jane Doe found in Memphis was the missing 19-year-old Tracy Jones.
That's when he found out right before Christmas that she had been murdered and that she was a Jane Doe on ice in Tennessee. They came to my mom's work to identify her. It was the FBI came to my mom and showed specific tattoos that my sister had. And that's how my mom was able to identify her. They didn't show her face. They just showed the tattoos and said, are these her tattoos? And my mom knew all of her tattoos and said, yeah, these are her tattoos.
Robert Blair also got a call from authorities.
It was around December 10th, and North Little Rock contacted me and said they wanted me to come up and meet with them for an interview. And so, I hopped on a bus and from Texarkana and went up to North Little Rock. And that's when I met with somebody from the FBI for the first time. But I remember during that interview, Tracy's mom was calling me. And I looked at my phone. I said, this is Tracy's mom right here. I need to get this. And they said, no, don't answer that. And I said, okay, so I left the phone down. And they said, we want to show you some pictures. And that's when they showed me a picture of 2 of her tattoos and said, do these look familiar? And I said, yeah, those are Tracy's tattoos. And then they showed me a picture of a necklace that I had purchased for Tracy. And I said, yeah, that's a necklace I bought her. I said, where did y'all get these photos? And that's when it hit me that she was found. And, I lost it. And they confirmed that they had found Tracy and that she was deceased.
Any hope that Tracy's family had been holding on to, that there was an innocent explanation and Tracy would be coming home, was now gone.
I found out when my mom called me. She called me on the phone and told me. And I didn't want to believe it. Because I didn't think something like that could happen to her. I thought that she was smarter and stronger than that. I was like, how? How could that happen? How could something like that happen? It's really hard that what happened to her, and I wasn't there to stop it. And I wasn't there to protect her, and there's nothing I could do.
Yeah, you used to always do that, protect her.
According to the autopsy, Tracy sustained multiple knife wounds to her head and body. A rape kit indicated that she'd been sexually assaulted, and her cause of death was blunt and sharp force trauma.
And it's just really hard to know that, when we got, the autopsy report, my mom didn't want to know, but I had to know. And what I read that they did, I was just, why would any human do this to another one? Why? There's no reason to be so evil. I understand, sometimes revenge killings or heat of the moment. But when you're just out there taking people out to take them out, what kind of person are you? Because that's what this was. It's obviously somebody just took her out to take her out. And there was no reason for it. It's just a life because they wanted to take a life. They got something out of taking lives.
Tracy's initial disappearance didn't draw a lot of media attention. It wasn't until she was finally found and identified that news stations began to cover her case.
her body in a ditch in Tennessee. I know there's news coverage of it. I probably watched that 5 billion times, knowing that in that body bag was my sister. I do know that a knife was broken off in her head, but it is apparently such a generic knife that you could buy anywhere that they can't take it back to a store to try to figure out. I do know that she had tape residue all the way up her thighs. So somebody had taken duct tape off of some of her thighs. They said in the autopsy report, it said that they could tell that she was taped, and then she must have broken it, and then they put wire and then taped over the wire for her arms and hands.
It was apparent that Tracy fought for her life.
I was proud of her for that. She fought.
She had to have been fighting really hard for the tape to go all the way up her thighs. Like, it was, from what it showed, it was like almost to her hips. The tape was that far up.
In 2022, Special Agent Ann Alexander and Public Affairs Officer Connor Hagan of the FBI's Little Rock field office provided more information about the case. Here's what they said in an interview with Overdrive Radio. Because Tracy was missing from Arkansas and found in Tennessee, it was that interstate nexus that gave the FBI jurisdiction. They said that Tracy was assaulted and murdered in a rough manner, and that she was not killed where her body was found. They did indicate that there's a lot of evidence, and they mentioned that there were multiple DNA samples on her. You'll remember that Tracy went missing on November 15th, and her body wasn't found until November 26th. They said that Tracy was killed closer to the 26th. So, what happened? Who had her? And where was she during those days? At the time, the FBI said there was nothing specific linking Tracy's death to a trucker, but the FBI poster on Tracy's murder says that investigators believe the individual responsible for Tracy's death may be associated with the trucking industry, and she was last seen at the Pilot truck stop speaking with truckers and other customers, selling magazines. North Little Rock police did take a missing person report on Tracy, but it was 2 days after she went missing. And even when her body was found near Memphis, Tennessee, 11 days later, she was not identified for about 2 more weeks. For a murder investigation, those crucial first hours, whether it was after her abduction or even after her murder, were long gone. One of the first steps for investigators would be to go back to that Pilot truck stop in Arkansas. According to Tracy's family, there were surveillance cameras at the Pilot truck stop, and it seems that Tracy was seen on camera, but only inside the truck stop.
Whoever it was knew exactly where the cameras were.
Oh, yeah.
Because she's there, and you never see where she goes. You see her, and then she's gone.
There's a store. You seen her come in the store. You see her. They saw the cameras, and she walked. She disappeared after that. And they have cameras outside, inside, all around the perimeter, because trucks are coming and going all day long. And it's just weird how all of a sudden your surveillance is only inside the gift store. She tried to sell some magazines at a guy sitting at a table in the diner, and that didn't work. So she came around and she walked into the gift store. And that's the last time they saw her on the tape.
And Robert, Tracy's manager and boyfriend, also wanted to know what was on those cameras.
I do recall going that day back to those truck stops and asking to look at footage. Surprisingly, the truck stop that I dropped her off at, they were more than willing to let me. You know, I guess I kind of wasn't very truthful about who I was, but I wanted to look at the footage. I was doing whatever it took to try to, figure out what the hell was going on. Conducting my own investigation, It was strange because they had no cameras at the pumps, supposedly, and that was just kind of odd to me that they only had cameras inside the store but not out at the pumps. And that's where she would work, was out at the pumps, catching people while they were pumping gas. And it just was odd to me that no footage, no cameras facing the pumps, and that would have been very helpful if they had.
So why was Tracy selling magazines at a truck stop in the first place, instead of in neighborhoods like the rest of the crew?
Part of our, daily routine is we'd get people ready for our morning meetings, which are about 8 a.m. And then after that, we would send the crew to eat breakfast while the managers had a meeting. The hotel that we stayed at that point in time had this travel center right across the street. It was like a huge truck stop, restaurant, gift store, the whole enchilada. We sent the crew across the street, all the crews over there to go eat. When she came back, within the hour, she already had like 10 sales. I was like, how did you, swing that? And she goes, I talked to truckers. And she had mentioned something about her dad being a trucker or something in the past. But it shocked me that she already had 10 sales before the actual workday started. So she says, I'd prefer to, work truck stops because I know how to talk to the truckers. And so from that day forward, instead of putting her in regular neighborhoods or apartment complexes, I would go out of my way to find a truck stop to put her at.
So when they arrived in Arkansas, that's what they did. And when they pulled up to the pilot truck stop, it looked familiar.
I can't remember when, but I know that she had worked that stop before. The last time we were in that area, she had worked that truck stop before, and it didn't register till we actually got there. Said, "Oh, you've been here before." She had done really well, so she was pretty stoked about working it, and said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to tear it up. I'll be done soon."
Tracy's father used to be a truck driver, and ironically, he was familiar with that same truck stop in North Little Rock.
And from Texarkana, Texas to Memphis, I've ran that exact road. I know that road like the back of my hand. I stopped there and got fuel. I ate there. I rested overnight there. And I had to go into Memphis to make pickups. So I know about where it was. It's not a real big one because we were just in and out of there. Maybe 40 trucks can park there at any given time.
So even though Tracy was seen in surveillance footage at the truck stop, it didn't lead to any suspects, let alone her killer. Her family, friends, and co-workers were questioned, but there were no actual witnesses to interview and no solid leads. The case goes cold. In 2009, the FBI launched the Highway Serial Killings Initiative in response to a trend of highway murders where the bodies of victims were dumped along the Interstate 40 corridor in Oklahoma, Texas, Mississippi, and Arkansas. According to the FBI, the victims in those murders were mainly women living a high-risk, transient lifestyle. Most times they were picked up at truck stops or service stations and sexually assaulted, murdered, and dumped along a highway. Many of those cases involve prostitution and drugs, and to be crystal clear, that is not the case with Tracy. But would that detail matter to a killer? The FBI goes on to say that the suspects in those interstate killings are mostly long-haul truck drivers. The cases are difficult to solve because of the mobile nature of the offenders, the unsafe lifestyles of the victims, the significant distances and multiple jurisdictions involved, and the scarcity of witnesses. In 2017, the FBI brought a renewed focus to Tracy's case, starting with a media push. Billboards featured Tracy's picture, along with reward information and a contact number for the FBI. And as we mentioned before, in 2022, an FBI agent spoke with Overdrive Radio about Tracy's murder, urging anyone with information to call their Little Rock field office. But so far, it doesn't appear that anything has led to a suspect. For the evidence that we've talked about, Tracy's sweatshirt and possible DNA specimens recovered at the autopsy, there's one item that has not been discussed. The pad case that Tracy would have been carrying. It was a standard item carried by the magazine sales crew.
It was a case that held the receipts. The guys and girls would fill out, the invoices for the magazines. And there was a little pad in it to write on. That's why we called it a pad case. That's where they put the orders they sold with the checks or cash. They would carry like their magazine list, the price list. Everything was carried in that pad case. That was kind of like a man purse for the guys and a purse for the ladies. That's where everything, they would put their personal stuff in there too, their ID, in case they, got stopped and asked for a permit or their identification, they had it on them right then and there.
Robert did not remember whether Tracy's pad case was ever recovered. Maybe she dropped it. Maybe the killer discarded it. Or maybe he kept it, as some offenders do keep items from their victims, trophies, something that lets them relive their crime. As the years tick by, Tracy's family and friends have become frustrated. They keep hoping for a break in the case. Maybe DNA technology will give authorities the clue they need to identify this predator. The loss of a vibrant young woman on the brink of a promising future is still felt to this day.
Tracy is someone I'll never forget. I think about her often. When those days that I do think about her, it does get me into some quicksand. It's hard for me to get traction or upward mobility once I get in one of those moods.
Her childhood friend told us that several years back, she posted about Tracy's case on social media, and several people left comments referring to Tracy as their best friend. So many people felt that close to her during her 19 years of life, which says a lot about her character.
Once she was in your life, she touched it in some way where you couldn't not remember her. She's not one of those people who are like, oh yeah, remember what's her name? No, you were like, yeah, Tracy from like 20 years ago,
Almost 2 decades after her murder, Tracy's family wants answers. They're hopeful that someone will do the right thing and come forward.
I feel like it would give me some closure that I don't have. I would like to know what happened, and I would like to know whoever did it gets what they deserve. I mean, honestly, I decided that I wanted to do this just because if this could stop somebody else from getting hurt, it's worth it. Even if I don't get the answers I need, maybe somebody else can be safe. And that's why I decided to do this, because saving one person is worth it. It's like 3 years after Tracy was murdered, a girl came to my door selling magazines. And I told her, please stop doing this. My sister was murdered doing this. Don't do this. It's not worth it. Whatever they're telling you, it's not worth it.
Well, I would just like them to take a moment to think about it, that it would just give us closure. That means more to me than anything. She didn't deserve what she got. She deserved to live. To die at 19 years old in such a violent manner, it's just not proper. If the person is out there, if somebody knows something, it would be great if they come forward, because like my daughter said, that if we could catch this person, it would be great, because we're going to save someone's life.
And Tracy deserves justice.
Mean to me, and it'd mean a lot to me for justice. The person or persons responsible for Tracy's death to be brought to justice, for her mom, for her sister. Her mom didn't get to experience that in her lifetime, and none of us live forever. I know her dad and her stepdad are alive, and her sister's alive, and she's got a lot of other family and support network out there that care about her and loved her, and they want answers too.
Here's the other Rob, a friend of Tracy's from their Oregon days together.
She did not deserve what happened to her, and whoever did that to her is a coward, and I'm sure has done it to many others, and we deserve to know who it is, and that person deserves to be in jail and to be judged for his actions.
Since Tracy's murder in 2006, DNA science has evolved. If there is an identifiable DNA profile on any of the evidence from Tracy, her clothing, or the area where she was found, maybe that will lead to the identification of her killer. But there may be others out there who have information that can also help to identify a suspect. The FBI poster about Tracy's murder offers a reward of up to $25,000 for information leading to the arrest and conviction for the person responsible for her death. If you have any information about the murder of Tracy Onawa Jones, call the FBI Little Rock office at 501-221-9100. You can find pictures of Tracy and other show notes, including a timeline and map, at apbcoldcase.com. And be sure to share the link to this podcast on your own social media.
Thanks for listening to APB Cold Case. Tell us about your cold case at apbcoldcase@spawngroup.com. APB Cold Case is an original Spawn Group production.